Hello and welcome. This is Dave Biggie with MarineMax, and today we're visiting with Kelly Wooley, professional travel planner with the MarineMax Vacations group. Kelly, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is exciting because I know that MarineMax Vacations has been around for a number of years and delivered literally thousands of charter vacations to people. And it's great to have you here to answer some of the questions that we've seen coming through our chat and email services. So we're very excited to have you. Before we begin, I would like to know a little bit more about you, your background, and how you came to be a team member with MarineMax Vacations.
Awesome. So I started sailing. I learned how to sail when I was in high school and fell in love with being on the water like that. Continued sailing in college. I was the secretary of the sailing club at UNC Wilmington. So I've always been pretty involved in being on the water. And when I graduated, I was hired at MarineMax shortly after graduating and have been here ever since.
Wow, that's wonderful. And what a great pathway to find yourself in the marine industry. So MarineMax Vacations, now this is a part of the overall company MarineMax, but it's very specialized. It focuses on vacations, as its name states. Tell us a little bit about MarineMax Vacations and what it is that you deliver to customers.
So MarineMax Vacations is made up of our custom-built power catamarans. These catamarans were designed with power charter guests in mind. We have 2, 3, and 4 cabin Aquila catamarans that guests can take out and charter from our base in Tortola. And you can captain yourself, you can have a captain on board, or you can have a captain and chef. So it's a fabulous way to see the islands, especially if you have a power boating background.
Gotcha. And so that's interesting. You mentioned 3 different ways to go experience the Tortola and the BVIs. Tell us a little bit about what, when you say captain and chef, tell us what is that experience like for a guest?
So if guests want to have a fully catered to experience, you can have a crewed charter. What that means is there's a captain and chef on board the charter with you, and they take care of everything. You'll give them a preference sheet, a list of the types of activities you'd like to do on charter, the types of foods and drinks you like to have, and based on your preferences, they will arrange the charter to your needs. Everything is taken care of. So from the time you land to the time you leave to go back home, there's really not much thought involved on your end. You get to just really relax and enjoy the islands and have things taken care of for you.
Gotcha. And as you say, it's everything is taken care of and everything's included. So very much a sort of a hands-off vacation experience. Is that right?
Yes, this would be a great option for people who want to go and see the islands, but don't really want to have too much involvement with the boat or be on shore going to the different bars and restaurants. It's really for people who want to stay on board and have all their needs taken care of. If you are really involved in boating and half the fun for you is captaining the boat, it wouldn't be the way to go. But if you want to go and relax and be pampered, that's what you would do, is go on a cruise charter.
Gotcha. And so the other 2 types of charter experiences, and just to be clear for some of our viewers that may not know, when we're talking about a charter experience, you mentioned the boats are 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. Give us a sense of the size of these vessels that we're talking about people using for their vacations.
So they're power catamarans. So relative to monohulls of the same size, there's much more space. Our largest boat, the 48-foot, has a 23.5-foot beam. So it's huge. The salon is great. The fly bridge is enormous. You can really feel that 23.5 feet. The cabins on the 48 are all queen size. There's walk around space. They each have their own head. So there really is, a lot of comfort on these boats. People that are, 6 feet are able to stand up comfortably in these cabins, which is, not the case necessarily with the 48-foot monohull. Same thing with the 44. There's a king size master cabin with a walk around bed, which, is really not something that you see on a 40-foot monohull.
Gotcha. Very good. So that kind of gives us our viewers a sense of what size boats you are chartering. The next experience that you talked about after the captain and chef experience was a skippered boat. And what does that mean exactly?
So that's a great way to go if you are not comfortable captaining the boat yourself, or you don't want, to have to worry about captaining the boat. One of my favorite things about, or like ways this was phrased is, I was speaking with one lady who wanted to charter. She said, my husband is more than capable of chartering this boat and captaining it himself, but I like to think of the captain as our marriage insurance. It's nice that we get to go and both of us get to relax, and not run the boat, but we're able to go and we can go ashore, go to restaurants. We're a little bit more hands-on in the planning of the charter, but the boating, captaining component is, given to the skipper that we have on board.
Yeah.
So if you decide to have a skipper, the skipper takes one of the cabins. So the 48-foot that has, 4 cabins, if you had a skipper, would only have 3 available for guests. So that's something to factor in with the skipper. But when I go and charter, that's what I like to do.
I understand. So someone else that sort of knows their way around, knows the vessel, and takes some of the stress off, or as you said, marriage insurance for some. That's a great,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And the last opportunity for charter, from what I understand, this is your most popular option, and that is what's called the Bareboat Charter. Describe that a little bit for our viewers.
So the Bareboat Charter is definitely the most popular. I would say the majority of guests prefer to bareboat because these boats are gorgeous. They're easy to use. They've got a shallow draft. The engines are far enough apart that they're very, user friendly. So people that are, have experience on boats in a similar size range will complete a boating resume that we have on the website. Once they're approved, we will start talking about the best boat for their family and what, will work best for the group that they're going with. And then you can, captain yourself. So what that means is there's not a skipper on board. There's not a captain and chef on board. Whoever is, doing the charter is running the boat for the duration of the charter. So that means you have more space in cabins. If it's a 48, then all 4 cabins are ones that you're going to use. It's great if you have, a large family, or if there's several couples going, to go and see the islands that way. It's really the situation where you run the show.
Right. It's funny because I've had people ask me, they say, you guys really put strangers on these $1 million boats and just turn them loose to drive them into beach guys. What is the qualification requirement? How difficult is that for the typical boater? Maybe share a little bit of what experiences are required.
So that's a great question. Most of the time, it's not something that I'm ever too worried about, because if people are a little bit nervous, they'll tell you, hey, we have experience on a 30-foot boat, but we want to go on a 48. We really don't feel comfortable. We need to have someone help us. So, most of the time that's not something that people jump out and they're trying to take a boat when that's almost 50 feet when they only have experience on a 20-foot day boat. But we have a process to qualify guests before they take the boat out. And that focuses on their experience on similar sized boats. There's several questions on the boating resume about the type of experience that they have boating, how many days they've been on the water in certain sizes of boats, if they have any qualifications, credentials, if you will, to take the boats out. They have experience inshore, offshore, lakes, if that's their primary place that they're boating all the time. So once we have that information, we're able to say, you're qualified to take this type of boat. If there's someone who has experience on a 40-foot boat, but they want to take the 44, we might offer a complimentary checkout skipper. It's close enough to the size boat that they'd want to take, but it's a half-day skipper that will show you the boat, make sure that you're comfortable running the boat. And once they sign off on, a couple of maneuvers and have seen you running the boat and that you're comfortable running the boat, they'll say, great, you can take the boat the rest of the charter, and you're approved.
I got that. Okay, so that sounds like you're pretty responsible about who you choose to operate the boat.
Yes.
Let's I may be jumping around a bit. Let's talk a little bit more about the BVI, or British Virgin Islands. Maybe for the viewers' sake, tell us where that is, give some landmarks if you can, or geographic placement, just so people have a sense of where these vacations are occurring.
So the British Virgin Islands are east of Puerto Rico and closer east of St. Thomas, so the U.S. Virgin Islands. It's a quick run if you're on a ferry from St. Thomas to Tortola, which is the main island in the British Virgin Islands. British Virgin Islands are a little less developed than the U.S. Virgin Islands. It's nature's best kept secret, I think, is the tagline the tourist board has right now. And you really do feel that way when you're there. A lot of the places are not overly developed. It still feels like you're, out in untouched land in a lot of places. And there's several, different islands. There's over 60 small islands that are part of the British Virgin Islands. So it's a beautiful, beautiful area to explore. Lots of places to see.
Wow. And with 60 different islands, are you able to, with the boat from MarineMax Vacations, are you able to go to all of these islands?
Well, it would take you kind of a longer charter to go and be able to see everything. But once you go, you really do want to go back again and again and again. We have a 7-day itinerary that's, a great guideline for people who want to charter. And it's really suggestions. It's some of the places that are most popular, places that are usually full of other people who are looking to have a good time, or some of our favorite snorkeling spots and, outdoor destinations, if you will.
Kelly, you mentioned 7 days as an itinerary. Is that a standard or a set requirement, or is there some flexibility to scheduling?
So most guests will go for 7 nights. That's probably the average length of charter. We do have a 5-night minimum. So a number of guests will go for 5 nights. You can go for 6, 7, 8, whatever works with your schedule. Most guests who are first-time charter guests will go for 6 or 7 nights. And then the second or third time around, depending on the flexibility in your schedule, a lot of guests will try to go for 8 to 12 nights. But we don't have restrictions on the days of the week you can start. Outside of holiday periods, there's 1 or 2 weeks that we restrict the start dates and end days. But outside of that, it's whatever works best, for you with that 5-night minimum.
Gotcha. And so obviously in the title, British Virgin Islands, this is not a U.S. territory. This is a British territory. So what's required for travel here?
You do need to have a passport to get in and out of the British Virgin Islands. The currency is US dollars. So really, once you get there, it's very friendly to American tourists in the sense that you use the US dollar, people are speaking English. You need a passport to get in and out. But aside from that, it's a new place to explore, but definitely they do a great job of making American tourists feel comfortable.
And so you talked about the beauty of nature. What are some of the things that people that would be looking to experience? What are some of the activities that exist in the British Virgin Islands?
There really is something for everyone. So there are people that will go on charter and spend 4 days diving. They want to go and they want to do a dive every day. There are other people who go, families, that will do more of a typical charter, which is kind of an activity on the water. I would say first thing in the morning, you get up, you go kayaking, you go paddle boarding, you just jump off the boat, have fun. There's so many beautiful places to go snorkeling. That's definitely a highlight. So people will do that usually kind of in the mornings, and then in the afternoon, you'll go ashore. There's a lot of different places to explore. I mentioned that there's 60 islands. Each island has a different energy. So you can go to the places that are a little bit more relaxed. Jost Van Dyke is pretty relaxed. Cooper Island, I would say, is probably a very relaxed place as well. It's got a resort. Jost Van Dyke is probably more of a party place. And then there's places like Scrub Island, which has a Marriott signature property there, which is great if you're looking for a resort and that type of experience.
Gotcha, gotcha. The other question that I've seen a lot of is, what is the best time of year to plan a trip to the BVI's?
So we're open all year round. There's not a specific time that I would say to avoid unless it's your first charter. And I would probably stay away from mid-August through mid-October because a lot of the restaurants and local establishments will close down for the low season and there's higher risk for storms. Now, once you've been before, if you like going when it's a little bit quieter, the end of August is beautiful. I loved going at the end of August because you felt like you had the entire place to yourself. We do have charter guests that will go every year around that time for that specific reason. Outside of that, there's not a bad time to go. Our peak time frame is between December and really, end of April, middle of May. But we do stay very busy during the summer as well.
Gotcha.
Any time is a good time to go. Anytime you can take the time to go is a good time to go.
Yeah, that's a good statement for a vacation anywhere, probably. But
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Tell us a little bit about what does the temperature fluctuate from between winter and summer? And I think water temperature would be just as interesting to people.
The water temperature is usually somewhere between 78 and 83 degrees, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So most of the year it's very comfortable. People will ask, if they're looking for warmer weather, people that are from Florida or Georgia or South Carolina, they'll be looking for warmer weather. And, I did have a group recently that was concerned about October. So we like going when it's warm. Is October going to be too cold? No, the weather stays very nice most of the year. If you go in October, November, December, maybe you want to bring a cardigan for the nights. It gets a little bit cooler, but as far as swimming, you can swim comfortably without any sort of wetsuit or extra gear all year round.
Gotcha. One of the other questions that I've seen a lot of through our notes is people ask about how stable the boats are, how rough the water is. What they're really asking is about being seasick. Have you had any experience with guests that you can share with us about that?
I would say since the boats are so wide and they have the two holes, they're pretty stable. We haven't had too many people guests come back and say that they had any issues from being seasick. If you go during certain parts of, certain times of the year when the wind is picking up, January is a great example of that. You need to be a little more conscientious of where you're staying overnight. But if you're paying attention to that and staying out of the wind at that time of year, usually it works out pretty well because the boats are so stable.
Gotcha. And when you say, that's a good point you bring up about overnight. When you say overnight, are they staying in a marina? Do they have to dock their boat each day, or are they anchoring, mooring balls? Tell us a little bit about what that's like. And you talked about being rough at night. Maybe describe some of the anchorages too.
Mm-hmm. So it's up to the guests where they would like to stay overnight. Most guests will stay at mooring balls overnight. Most of the anchorages there will have mooring balls. They're first come, first serve. And you'll pull up to the mooring balls. Someone will come up to you on a little dinghy and ask you for, $30 or $40 cash, depending on where you are. They'll write you a receipt, and then you'll be able to stay at that mooring ball overnight. Some guests, depending on their itinerary and preferences, will stay at a slip overnight. Another example of Scrub Island is if people want to go and have a spa treatment and stay the night at Scrub Island, that's a great place to get a slip and stay there overnight. The other option is to anchor out. There's a lot of cute anchorages. Most of the time people prefer to stay at the mooring balls, but if you want to anchor out, it's an option. There's plenty of places you can do
Gotcha. And you talked about a few of the destinations. You mentioned Joost Van Dyke, and I wanted to ask you personally. You've been there a number of times. Where's your favorite spot that you recommend everyone go visit?
You know, it changes every trip. It really does. I think the first time, I went, we loved staying in the North Sound. Bitter End is just, it's so fun to be over there. They have this cute little race that they do, this little regatta they did at the time, which was a lot of fun. And the North Sound is just always beautiful. Ledwick Bay is a fabulous destination there. They've got live music at night, a great restaurant that looks out over the whole North Sound. That's a great place to be. The other highlight, well, a couple of other highlights. Cooper Island is a fabulous place to relax. That definitely feels a little bit more quiet. I wouldn't necessarily say out of the way, but it does feel a lot more, it feels relaxed. It's very relaxed over there. And the other place that I love that's always a hit, and whenever my family talks about being in the BVI, the first place they mention is Anegada. Anegada is an island that's north of the North Sound. It's something that we recommend for guests that have been on charter before or are experienced chartering in the BVI, because it is a little bit of a longer run, and it is the only island in the cruising grounds that you are really not in sight of land to get there. So it's a little bit more challenging to get there, but well worth it if the weather is cooperating. The island is completely flat. The beaches there are they're incredible. I think we've only seen other people on those beaches maybe once or twice. There's just totally remote. There's beautiful reefs, and just the cutest little beach park out there.
That's great. They sound amazing. Is there a way for guests to learn more about these destinations that you can offer?
So I would say probably the best resource to start is our YouTube channel. We have a suggested itinerary on the MarineMax website, and the YouTube channel goes through each of the destinations that we suggest with a guide. So you can get a good feel for the area with one of our MarineMax employees walking you through the destination, which is great. If anyone else is more interested, they can always contact one of the charter agents through the MarineMax website, and we'll be happy to walk you through a suggested itinerary and talk to you about what destinations would work best for your group and for what you're looking for in your vacation.
You bring up another good point. You talked about the vacation planning expertise that MarineMax provides. So the reservations themselves, I understand you can't book those through any other travel agent or broker. Everything is done directly through your office and through you and your team of professional travel planners. Is that correct?
Yes. So we do direct reservations only, which is somewhat unique for charter businesses. That works out really well for us because we have such a small team and we communicate so often with our base staff. We're able to really make sure that each guest has an experience that feels like it's a custom experience. We really pride ourselves on taking good care of the guests and making sure that they have a fabulous time, that they want to come back and charter with us again. And by keeping everything, within this small team, it makes it really easy to have relationships with each of our guests that go on vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. And you've been recognized, I know, a couple awards. Tell us about those.
So MarineMax Vacations has twice won the best BVI charter company. The 44-foot Aquila was one of the top powerboat designs of all time. We have a fabulous staff, we have fabulous boats, and it makes for a wonderful experience.
Yeah, and I see the ratings on TripAdvisor also are very, very high. That speaks well to the experience as well.
Absolutely.
We talked about travel planning and working directly with you. What are some of the other aspects that someone would consider when they're working with you to plan a vacation? What are some of the other considerations?
A lot of people will ask about getting to and from the BVI. That's something that we can help coordinate. We don't do the bookings for the flights, but we can help you find ones that are going to work for everyone. There are two options to fly into, two options to get to Tortola. One is to fly to St. Thomas and take a ferry from St. Thomas to Tortola. The benefit to that route is it's usually less expensive to take those flights. So, if it's a large family, a lot of times that's the way people will go, flying into and out of St. Thomas. Also, if you don't like smaller airplanes, flying in and out of St. Thomas is a good option, because the second option is to fly into San Juan and take a smaller plane from San Juan directly into the airport on Tortola, which is about a 30-minute taxi ride from our charter base. That will save the most time. That's usually the most efficient way to get to and from Tortola. Does tend to be a little more expensive, so sometimes people make decisions based on that. And if you're not a fan of smaller airplanes, you wouldn't really want to take that route. But otherwise, flying into Tortola is definitely a convenient way to get there. Guests will also ask about provisioning. They'll want to know what's on board the boat and what we can help arrange to get on board. We have a provisioning list. There's one for water toys, so if you want paddleboards or kayaks, any water toys, that would be something we can help coordinate. There's one for the grocery store that we partner with, so you can choose all of your items a la carte, and they'll be brought to the boat before you arrive. Then we also have a couple of vendors that are a little more specialized for guests that have very specific preferences for either their liquor or their wine, and we work with those vendors too to make sure our guests have what they need.
Gotcha.
People also ask, this is kind of a smaller question, but people ask too about hair dryers. Get a lot of questions about hair dryers. We don't have hair dryers on board the boat. We do have towels and things that you would need, snorkeling gear, those types of things, and you can use a hair dryer on the boat, but gotta bring your own.
Explain to me how it works when I arrive. So I travel to St. Thomas. I take a ferry over to Tortola, and I come to your location at a marina. And then what happens next? Is the boat just there? The keys are in it, and I go, or what? Kind of walk me through what that process looks like for someone that has never done it.
Okay, so we have taxi transfers that will pick you up at either the airport or the ferry terminal. So you'll show up to the island, go through customs, and then you'll arrive at the base after taking the taxi. And there's two ways that you can start the charter, two different start times. There's an evening start, which is great for people who are flying into St. Thomas, maybe don't get to the base until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. If that's what your arrival schedule looks like, you'll be able to get on board at 4 p.m. the night of your sleep aboard and stay aboard the boat that night. And the next morning, the briefing will start sometime between 10 and 11 most of the time. The briefing has several components, and it usually takes between 2 and 3 hours to go through both the boat briefing and a chart briefing. But before I get into that, the second option for the start time is to start at noon. So if guests are going to fly into St. Thomas and stay there overnight and take an early ferry, you can start at noon, and your briefing will start around that time, and you'll be off the dock somewhere between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. There's two components to the briefing process. We have a chart briefing and a boat briefing. The chart briefing generally happens first. That is something that we do upstairs in the air-conditioned portion of the office on Tortola. One of our team members will walk through a couple of things you need to know about the area. We'll talk about things you need to know about navigating in the area. For example, there's several different colors of mooring balls, and we'll walk through that, things that you need to know about the weather, and any big events that are going on that you need to be aware of in Tortola. And once that's finished, you'll go through a question and answer portion, make sure that everyone is, feeling comfortable about getting out on the water. And that needs to be attended by the captain. We suggest for one other, member of the charter to go along with, but it's up to you how many people you'd like to have attend in addition to that. Once that's finished, there's a boat briefing, and that's when you really get acquainted with the boat. So we'll have someone walk you through the systems on board the boat, the water maker, the air conditioning, the raymarine system, and that's a time to really go through all the systems on board to make sure that you're comfortable before you leave the marina and before you're out on the water. Something that's good to know about this whole checkout process is we have a whole video series again on our YouTube channel where guests can go and get acquainted with all these systems and go through what's going to be on the chart briefing ahead of time. Because when you get there, you're so excited, you're ready to get on the water. And if you have a bit of a reference point before you get out, it makes that whole process so much easier, so much faster, so you can get out on the water and get started.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm sure based on the quality surveys and feedback and reviews for your charters, I'm sure you guys do a complete and thorough job. One of the other questions, and this question I see a lot, is what about Wi-Fi? Is Wi-Fi available in the islands?
It depends on who's asking you, right? So if you want to go and totally disconnect from everything, you can kind of disconnect. We do have Wi-Fi included. Wi-Fi will come in a hotspot. So it comes with a couple of gigabytes included in your charter. And once those have run out, once you've used those, it's a pay as you go, kind of like those, older cell phones where you would buy the cards with minutes, kind of a similar setup that we have for the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi works really well most places. I will say that there are a couple of places where it is tricky to get signal. So, if you have any work calls, you can ask us ahead of time. If it's something you really need to be involved in, we can help you figure out where you can get the reception and where you don't get the reception as much. But you'll be able to stay connected. Maybe not for streaming, but for checking emails and that, you'll be able to do that. But it's better to disconnect, right?
Yeah, I think that's the purpose for a lot of people, or that's the whole purpose. Tell me, Kelly, give us an idea. How far in advance of the charter do you typically recommend people start planning or booking a reservation with you?
We usually start to fill up outside of holiday periods around 6 months in advance. For holiday periods, a year in advance, maybe even 2, if you know that you're going to be able to go certain days, it's best to have them on the calendar. But for most of the year, 6 months ahead of time is when we start filling up. And this year especially, we have a little bit less inventory because people have been changing the reservations and pushing them a little bit farther out due to COVID. So we have a little bit less inventory than we usually do. So it's really never too early to start planning.
Yeah, wow, that does require some planning. Kelly, so I've tried to list a variety of questions that I've seen come through on the chat. I'm sure there's other questions. You've been doing this so long. What questions have I not asked that you think would be important for viewers to know the answers to?
Ooh, that's a good one. What questions have we not asked? Really, a lot of people will ask about, getting to and from the base, which we've talked about. I would definitely suggest if people are looking at flights to St. Thomas, that they consider taking a private ferry. That's something that doesn't always come up in the first couple of conversations, but it makes the whole process so much easier if you can take a private ferry rather than taking the public one, especially if you're on a flight a little bit later in the day. People ask about a couple of different things, different locations in the islands. They'll say, oh, how does everything look in the North Sound? How is everything doing? And things look really good. The whole area is it's green, it's beautiful, and people are ready to go back. Let's see if there's any other questions that people will ask about what's included too. So we will have snorkeling gear on board. The dinghy is included. A lot of people ask if the dinghy is included or not. You can do water toys like a paddleboard and a kayak. We don't have any jet skis. If you want to do diving equipment, we can help set that up. So those are a couple of other things that people will ask.
That's great. That's great. And the fleet itself, I understand that the fleet is managed by MarineMax, but the boats themselves have private ownership. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the boats are owned by MarineMax, most of them. And then there are some people who love chartering so much and have, the flexibility with their schedules that they purchase a boat into the charter ownership program. So what that is the owner of the boat has a certain amount of time every year that they're able to card rate on the charter. So they get to go and enjoy the boat for 6 to 9 weeks a year, depending on when they're there. And that's part of the ownership program for the boat.
Gotcha. So that's another interesting opportunity that MarineMax Vacations provides for potential boat ownership for folks.
It is, and it's nice because we're smaller and because we do have a smaller team, we really do have a close relationship with the owners, which is such a special thing.
That's great. Kelly, you've been a wealth of information. I have one question left, and I know it's the question that everybody asks, so I saved it for last, but cost. So that's always going to be a question that's on every chat that I've seen, that every email reply has a question about cost. If you could, and not to pin you down, I understand seasonality changes some of this, but if you could give us some ranges of perhaps what the boat might cost and what other expenses I should consider if I'm looking at booking a charter.
Good question. So there's a big range, like you mentioned, depending on the size boat and the time of year. So for our smaller boat during low season, $5,000 would be a starting point. To our largest boat during high season could be closer to 20. So there's a huge range depending on the boat and the time of year, but somewhere between 5 and 20. 5 is close to 5 to 9, maybe for the 36. Somewhere between 10 and 12 for the 44, and then the 48 is what will get you into that higher price bracket, somewhere between $12,000 to $20,000, depending on the time of year. The boat is definitely the biggest cost to factor in. Flights as well are a pretty big cost. And if you're going to do a ferry to and from, St. Thomas, if it's a ferry, private ferry, that will be an additional cost. But once you're there and you've done that, you've done the provisioning, you'll pay for mooring balls on top of that. That's usually $30 to $40 a night, and then anything you want to do ashore, any sort of. So the boat and the flights are, the biggest items, and then the provisioning, which can be, again, a huge range. We've had people provision for $50 worth of food, and then $3,000 worth of food. So
wow.
Huge range.
Yeah, and when I have visited with people that have done the trip with you, the one thing they always say is, divided by the number of people, it was very affordable. Do you hear that as well?
Absolutely, because sometimes if you look at that big number, it looks a little bit big. But if you're splitting it, especially if you're taking the 48 and you're going with 4 couples, it's going to be a lot more affordable than going on, any sort of cruise. I know some of those family cruises can get quite expensive. Trips to any of the major amusement parks, for 7 days are probably going to be significantly more expensive than a group of 4 couples taking the 48 out for a week. Going to Europe, again, with flights and staying in some of those hotels, it adds up pretty quickly. And relative to a lot of destinations, this can be quite affordable.
Yeah, that's great. It's great information, Kelly, and you're obviously very knowledgeable and enjoy what you do. How does someone find out more information? How would they get in touch with you?
So the MarineMax Vacations website, marinemaxvacations.com, is where to go. We have a lot of great information up there. the itinerary information, pictures, virtual tours of all the boats, and a way to contact us. There's a chat online. You're usually able to get in touch with us through chat immediately. And if you have questions about pricing, if you request a quote, we'll get back to you with information about how much your dates would cost.
That's great. Again, I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Is there anything else that's crossed your mind that, oh, we should tell them this?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, but I think we've covered a lot of ground. I don't really think there's anything we left out.
Oh, that's great. Well, you've been so informative, and I thank you so much for taking this time out of your day to answer many of these questions that we've gathered through all of our social media and email inquiries. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and best of luck to you, and happy sailings.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave.